What's up, people? We're back. Really, we never left, but we're back. Episode number 175. This one is titled Small Website Changes That Can Have a Big Impact. So, from my understanding, Scotty's going to be taking the reins on this one for the most part. But it seems like recently Scotty did somewhat of a deep dive on a friend's business who pretty much knows what he's doing. But basically, Scotty went through and found like there were a lot of little things that he could improve on to improve his conversion rate, improve the business, make more money. And I think that's kind of what we want to go through in this episode is just all these kind of small specific things on the website that even if you're running an already successful store, an already successful brand, just spending a little bit of time on some of these things could end up having a big impact on your overall results. Because the thing is, once you already have something that's working, you're not going to be looking to make huge changes. You're not going to be looking to change the market that you're selling to. Maybe you change the offer, but you're not going to be making huge changes because you already have something that's working. But you still, as we always say, a huge part of e-com is just constantly improving the business. And once you get to a certain point, it's tough to get those, really big gains. But by making a couple small changes, those things can add up to bigger gains than you would think, just by looking at it. Like something just super simple that doesn't really feel like a big change, it actually can have a big effect on overall profit, especially when you're operating at scale. So that's what we want to talk about in this episode. Scotty, take it away, my man.
Yes, sir. So I think this is actually a really good exercise to do on your own store, on other people's stores. Go through everything just highly critically and ask yourself, is this the best it can be? What can be improved? What can we change here? Just be highly critical. Because if you just glance over it, this store looks fine, it looks good. But if you go deeper, there was a lot of things that I was like, this could be better, this could be a little bit better. And I mean, I guess it goes even further. I placed a test order and I got some emails in that, again, they're okay, but there's things that can be improved. Just a lot of details that when put together add up to, it's one of those things, they're all small minor changes, but when you add them all up together, it's the difference between a decent website and a really great website that just stands out and looks fantastic, looks super congruent, looks like a really valuable brand versus just like, oh, this is a decent store. So do this on your own store, do it on your business partner store, do it on your friend's store. I think a very valuable exercise to be doing every few weeks or so. And again, like the things we're going to list here are what I noticed on his store. These are straight from my notes, but a lot of them are going to be common things that you'd want to look at as you're doing the audit on your own store. So first thing I noticed was in the announcement bar, that's a bar sort of across the top of the website. It was a little confusing how it was formulated. And I think that's pretty common, unfortunately. This is super valuable, like real estate on your website. It's one of the first things people see. It really stands out because it's usually in a different color. This is valuable real estate, and you got to make sure that it's used in the most effective, most persuasive way possible. So you really got to think about what you're going to put there and whether what you've put there is formulated in the clearest, most concise, most persuasive way. That's not always easy because it's a pretty small space. So you only have enough room for 3, 5, 6, 8 words or whatever. And you really got to make the most use of that limited space. I felt with him, it was sort of unclearly formulated what he was trying to say. And I think we could clean it up. I think I probably actually sent him how I would clean it up as well. And that has since been fixed. Another thing I noticed with the announcement bar was a design issue where sort of the website was dark. It was like a black background, black header rather. So it was a black header, and the announcement bar background, it was almost black, but not quite. It was like a really dark gray. And anytime you have two colors right next to each other like that, they can't be almost the same. They either have to be drastically different, black red, black and red, whatever. Or they have to be identical. So if you have black and black, it just looks like a continuous header. That can work. Generally with the announcement bar, you're going to want to have a drastically different color. But you definitely do not want to have two colors like that that are almost the same, but not quite the same right next to each other. It's a bit of a design blunder, to be honest. And I think it probably happens because you're setting one up within the app and the other, you're setting up your theme by editing the Shopify theme settings, and the other thing you're setting up within an app, and you sort of forget that the two need to match. Simple mistake to make, but if you do an audit like this and check your site, it should be pretty easy to spot and fix. Then I noticed that he has his collection pages featured on the homepage, which is good, but he had a product that wasn't selling that much as the main image for the collection. And for him, there's one product that's doing pretty well. In that collection, it's selling a lot more than everything else. People seem to love it for whatever reason. So I told him to make that the main image of the collection, because that's the product you want to show on the homepage. If there's one product that people vibe with way more than everything else, make sure that's prominently featured on the homepage. Moving on, that was all sort of seen on the homepage. I guess the announcement bar is on all pages, but I started with the homepage. Those are the things I noticed there. Moving on from there, I went to the collections page. I won't get into the specifics too much here because it's all specific to his business and his specific product. But there was an issue with congruency where the products were all of the same product type. Let's say they were all t-shirts, and they were all supposed to have the same brand logo on them, but on some of the images or some of the renders, the logo was bigger than on others. And if you looked at any of the pictures individually, they look great. Like, they're decent renders. There's nothing wrong with the renders individually. But if you look at it as a collection, the logo should be the same size in all of them. On the actual product, the logo is the same size in all of them. But for some reason on these renders, one of them was like noticeably bigger. I believe one of them was noticeably smaller, and the rest were kind of the same size. And would a customer notice that? Maybe, maybe not, but it feels off. And when you're trying to convert cold traffic, anything that adds resistance to that person from making that impulse purchase is bad. It can really hurt your conversion rate. The customer might not be able to put their finger on what's wrong here, but they feel it. It creates some sort of resistance when your images aren't 100% congruent. I mean, I think we've talked about this before in Schmidt's first store or first big store success. The congruency was massive about it, where you had different watch straps, and maybe I think they were probably from all the same supplier, or at least the render was made by the same guy, in that all the renders looked the same, even though they were different watch straps, different watch strap designs. They were all pictured the same, all the same white background, all the same lighting, all the same angle in the picture. And that just made it look really professional right off the bat, day one off AliExpress. And I mean, that's just massive. It makes you look so much more professional, and it removes a bit of resistance, and removing
it makes it look so legit. When you have like a collection of products that are all similar, and the photos for all the products are all like, they all look the same except for the product is different, it makes you look like a real big brand. And like, I remember getting so many compliments, like from like the Shopify support guys, from like Facebook marketing experts and stuff. Like, they're like, wow, this is really good. And like, they couldn't believe that I was dropshipping. Like, they literally thought it was a real brand.
And that's a trust factor too. Like, looking legit just adds so much trust to your business. Congruency is a big part of that. Sort of moving on, going from the collection page, clicking through to the products. First, talking about the product photos. Again, this is highly valuable real estate. It's one of the first things people see. It's one of the most impactful things in your conversion rate. So you really got to think about which pictures to use for maximum effect, making sure your best pictures are displayed and that the absolute best one is displayed first, preferably. In this case, I felt like he didn't have any bad pictures in there, but he had some images and specifically some renders in there that were kind of redundant. So he showed his product from like slightly different angles with different renders, and they didn't really add much to the sales pitch. They didn't add much to the selling argument. Where if you cut out 2 or 3 of the images and either just cut them out and focus on just showing your best ones, showing them more prominently, I think that would be an improvement. And then also in his specific case, he actually has really fucking solid content that I felt he wasn't using to the full extent. So I suggested that he removes some of those redundant renders and replaces it with more lifestyle shots, more model content, more just really good content that does add something to the sales pitch. Sort of in the same manner, he used, I believe, 1 picture in the product description, like in the text part of the description, if you will, which is fine. The image is great, it looks great, but he has more good content that he could have put in there, and I told him to do that. I also think some people are kind of hesitant to put the same images in the product content description part and also in the product photo section. I think that's dumb. I think you can easily put the same images in both. If you think about how it's displayed, at least on mobile most of the time, people will have to click through the product photos to see them all. They may do that, they may not. And for the description, they have to scroll down and read, or at least fly over the entire description to see all the content. They may do that or they may not. If you have really good content, you want to maximize the chance that people see it. And I think the way you do that is by putting it in both the product photos and the product description, the text section. Nothing wrong with having the same content in both.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that.
Moving on to the product copy. Product copy was pretty decent. He's a good writer. He knows what he's doing there. I noticed a few things though, where I just said like, hey, remove this word. The sentence is kind of weird. I'd rephrase this differently. And I think that's one of those things where if you write it yourself, you might not see it. And if someone else sees it, it just springs right out at them. But one exercise that you can do to sort of proofread your own copy without getting someone else to look over it is to read it out loud. So after you've written your copy, after you've done your editing, sort of the final editing step is read your copy out loud. And any parts that you sort of stumble over, where you stumble over your words, any parts that seem hard to read, probably a good sign that you need to simplify or restructure that sentence to just get the point across in a more simple and concise way. I also felt while the copy was well written, there was a few things in there that honestly should almost universally be mentioned in product copy that he didn't have in there. Things like, what's the guarantee? Is there 30-day refund policy, 365 lifetime guarantee? What's the guarantee? Let's mention it in the copy and display it prominently. I think we usually put the guarantee sort of in a H2 heading where it's pretty prominently displayed. Lifetime guarantee, 365-day guarantee, what have you. This business ships from the US, and he did have it on there somewhere, but it wasn't very prominent. And on my first reading, I missed it. If someone visits your site from Facebook, they're not going to be looking at it as detailed as I was for this audit. If you're going to ship from the US and go through the hassle of getting bulk orders to the US, going through that risk, putting up the money up front, for God's sakes, like highlight the fact that you ship from the US, that you have fast shipping. You got to highlight that. Also, return and exchange policy. If you sell clothing, jewelry, anything like that, you got to highlight what your return and exchange policy is, because people are going to be wondering it. And if people have a question that is not answered, that might be a reason that they leave and never come back. Just classic sales 101. If they have questions, if they have objections, you need to answer them. And in this case, I felt like a return exchange policy was absolutely necessary and was not really mentioned. One final thing about the product copy that I brought up to him was, I asked him if he was confident in all his claims. Are you confident that your product actually can deliver everything that you claim it's going to do for people? And I think this is a common thing where, as a marketer, it's easy to get carried away when writing copy. It's easy to promise the world and maybe lose touch a little bit of what your product actually is and what it can actually do for people. It's a bit of a problem. And I think this partly happens because you're doing your market research as you should, and you try to deliver that product that delivers everything that people want based on your market research. You do want to do that, but there's a limit to it. You have to actually ask yourself, is this realistic? Can my product actually do what I'm claiming here? And that is a tough question. You got to be honest with yourself, be honest about what your product can and can't do. It's a constant thing now, managing people, managing our marketing team. I think it's natural. Young, hungry marketers, they want to claim the world. They want to claim that the product fucking cures cancer and is the best thing since sliced bread. And it's kind of my job now to be the fucking boring old fart and push back on some of the claims and say like, no, we can't say that. When you're just getting started, you have to wear both hats. You have to write the copy and claim the world, claim that it solves world hunger. But then you also got to, in the editing process, be realistic with yourself and ask yourself, does this fidget spinner really solve world hunger? No, probably doesn't. Let's cut out that claim, sort of thing. And the issue with this is like, even if you have a great product, which I think this business absolutely does, even if you have a great product, if you make claims that your product can't quite live up to, people are going to be disappointed and upset, and it's going to reflect badly on your business, even though you might have a really good product, but you just oversold it. And you want to avoid try to avoid to absolutely oversell your product. It's a tough balancing act, but just ask yourself, can my product actually live up to all the claims that I'm making here in my copy?
Yeah. And that's not even something that's like you should obviously do that because it's the moral thing to do. You shouldn't like be super overinflating your claims because, just morally, ethically, it's just, it's just not the right thing to do. But it's also like, when it comes to your profits, if you have crazy claims and then your customers get your product and it doesn't meet, it doesn't meet the standards that you set for it, doesn't meet the expectations that you set for it, then all of a sudden your refund rate is going to go through the roof and you're going to make less money. Whereas if you just kind of, maybe if you just tone the claims back a little bit, maybe your conversion rate's not quite as high, but you also don't have nearly as high of a refund rate because, you're not promising people the world and promising something that you can't fulfill.
Yeah. Perhaps even more crucially long term, if you're a decent human being, which I hope most of you are, definitely not all of you by law of large numbers, but most of you are probably decent human beings. If you start getting complaints about your product saying it doesn't do what you claimed it does, you're going to start feeling bad about it. It's going to drain your energy. You're not going to be as motivated to work. You're honestly likely to shut down your business because of it. You're going to stop running this product because you're not happy with how people are reacting to it. You might have a decent product though. You might have a good product and just be overselling it. So sort of keep that in mind, where if you're getting bad feedback on your product or poor feedback at times, it might not be that your product sucks. It might be that you're overselling it. And if you cut back on the claims, be a bit more realistic about what your product is and what it isn't, then you might have a lot better sort of customer feedback. I think that's a common thing shipping from China, where like your product photos look great. You try to claim that it's super high quality, premium quality, etc., premium pricing to go with it. If you just market it as, hey, this is cool as fuck and cheap, or like cool as fuck and super affordable, people might have loved it. But because you market it as a premium good, as a high quality thing, people are going to be upset when it's flimsy. Whereas if you just market it as this is cool as fuck, this is a great fucking funny Halloween gift or whatever, people are going to be a lot more happy with it. Even if it is flimsy, because they weren't expecting it to be a fucking Rolex. They were expecting it to be a cool, funky watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I remember the boy Use talking about that a long time ago, and kind of positioning your products not as like a necessarily a luxury thing, but there's a lot of other ways to position it where you're not creating super, super high expectations, because you don't really want to do that for all the aforementioned reasons.
Unless you can deliver. If you can deliver, absolutely do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that we're not out here marketing the ecom dispensary as if you join the ecom dispensary, you will immediately get rich. Like that's
And grow your dick 6 inches.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to have a model girlfriend within 2 weeks. Like that's just, that's not
Well,
realistic.
I mean, that last part might be true. If you fucking think it into existence with our cybernetic magic.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I agree. I think that those are all really good points. Scott, do you have any other points from this this little exercise that you did with your pal's store?
I do not. I would just highly recommend people do this process, doing an audit. You can do the same thing with your email marketing. You can go through the checkout process. I didn't notice anything wrong with the checkout process here. I thought it was all pretty smooth. You can also do the same thing with your ads. So you can go from ads, click through to website, click through checkout process, place a checkout order, see what comes in. I guess one thing I did notice was some incongruency in the emails where the brand name was spelled differently. Like sometimes he spells it 2 words, both words capitalized. Sometimes it's 1 word, first letter capitalized. Sometimes it was 1 word, no capitalization. Just felt kind of weird and incongruent there. So that was another thing I noticed. Just consistency, like whatever you're gonna pick, just stick with it. Just again makes for a better brand look.
Yep. I would agree. I think that we've been doing a little bit of stuff with this, with our like email marketing and our SMS like retargeting and stuff like that recently as well.
Yes, sir. We have. We actually do this shit. We're actually out here doing it.
We actually do it. We do actually do this. Well, Scotty, thank you for sharing,
website part of
it. Thanks for sharing all these specific things. I think this is definitely a great practice to get into. Just something that you do, once every few months, and then just go through everything that you're doing.
Man. More often than every few months, for sure.
Yeah, you could do it once every few weeks. Just go through everything that you're doing with a fine-tooth comb and see what you can find, the little small improvements you can make. And I think really like the big key with this is you really have to go through this entire process from the perspective of the customer, of the prospect, of the person who is seeing this. It's very easy to look at things from the owner's perspective and just kind of, you're like so close to it. It's tough to see where things can be improved. But if you can really try to put yourself in the shoes of, your ideal customer going through this process, I think that can really open your eyes to some of these small changes that you might not be able to see otherwise.
Yes, sir, Schmitty. I think we wrap it up there.
Let's do it, folks. We got one more episode for you this week, folks. We'll talk to you there.